Red Hollow was the kind of town that remembered everything and forgave nothing. It remembered who lost their ranch in the drought of '98. It remembered who cheated at cards behind the saloon. And it definitely remembered who got left standing alone at the altar. Caleb Turner had become that memory. 3 months ago, the entire town had gathered beneath the lantern-lit beams of Miller's barn to watch him marry the woman he'd loved for 5 steady, hard-working years. But by sunrise, she was gone. No dramatic argument, no scandal, just a letter, folded carefully on the kitchen table, saying she wanted more than a life of dust and cattle. Since then, Caleb had worked longer hours than ever, as if he could plow heartbreak into the earth and bury it beneath soil and sweat. He stopped smiling. He stopped laughing. But he didn't stop. Showing up every evening at Daisy, May's diner for black coffee at exactly 6 o'clock. No sugar, no cream, no conversation. That was the pattern, until Emma Collins decided to break it. Emma wasn't the type people noticed when she walked into a room. She moved softly, spoke gently, and kept her eyes lowered longer than most. But in her kitchen she was fearless. She could turn flour, butter, and apples into something that made grown men close their eyes in gratitude. She had inherited the diner from her late aunt and poured every ounce of herself into keeping it alive. Yet no matter how warm the pies or how kind her smile, Red Hollow saw her as the girl who had been dumped by Daniel, Harper, the ambitious cattle broker who decided love was less important than marrying into wealth. Daniel was attending the harvest social tomorrow night with his new wife in front of everyone. Emma had told herself she didn't care. She had practiced indifferent smiles in the mirror. She had rehearsed calm responses in case he approached her. But courage shrinks quickly under string lights and gossiping eyes. That evening, as Caleb sat at his usual table near the window, staring into the amber reflection of his coffee, Emma felt her heartbeat echo in her ears. She wiped her hands on her apron, walked over, and stood there longer than necessary. "Caleb," she said softly. He looked up, surprised to hear his name spoken like that. There was something trembling beneath her composure. "I need to ask you something," she continued, swallowing hard. "And I promise it's not a joke." He leaned back slightly, studying her face. "Go on." She inhaled deeply, every ounce of shyness fighting her. "Can you pretend to be my boyfriend for one night?" The diner seemed to freeze. Even the ticking clock on the wall felt louder. Caleb blinked once, processing. "Pretend," he repeated slowly. She nodded, words spilling out now. "Tomorrow night at the harvest social. Daniel will be there, and I don't want to look like the girl he left behind. I don't want pity. I don't want whispers. I just want to walk in there and feel like I'm not small." Caleb's jaw tightened at the word small. He understood that feeling too well. He understood standing in a room where everyone silently measured your loss. "You think pretending will change their minds?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "No, but maybe it'll change mine." That answer hit him harder than he expected. This wasn't vanity. This was dignity, and something about the courage it took for her to ask stirred something. Protective in him, he studied her for a long moment before speaking. "What exactly does pretending involve?" A flicker of hope crossed her face. "Hold my hand. Dance once. Smile like you mean it." He hesitated, then nodded once. "All right." Her breath caught. "All right." "One night," he said firmly. Neither of them realized how dangerous one night could be. The harvest social arrived wrapped in golden autumn light. The barn glowed with lanterns. Music drifted through open doors. Red Hollow gathered in polished boots and pressed dresses ready for spectacle. Caleb stood outside Emma's cottage that evening, adjusting the cuff of his shirt, telling himself this was simple, a favor, nothing more. When the door opened, he forgot how to breathe. Emma stepped out in a soft blue dress that flowed gently around her knees. Her auburn hair, usually tied back in practicality, fell loosely around her shoulders. She looked nervous, but radiant in a way that demanded attention, without asking for it. "You look different," he said. She gave a small laugh. "That bad?" He shook his head slowly. "No, that's strong." She didn't know why those words steadied her, but they did. As they walked toward the barn together, whispers began before they even crossed the threshold. Inside, Daniel Harper stood near the cider table, his arm wrapped around a woman in deep crimson silk. He looked confident until he saw Emma, then his eyes shifted. Then he noticed Caleb beside her. Confusion flickered into irritation. Emma felt her courage wobble, but then Caleb's hand slipped into hers. Not forced, not exaggerated, just steady, warm, real. She straightened instinctively. They walked in together and something subtle but undeniable changed in the air. Daniel approached first, wearing a smile too polished to be sincere. "Emma, didn't expect to see you here," he said smoothly. "Why wouldn't I be?" she replied calmly. His gaze dropped to their joined hands. "Didn't know you were seeing someone." Caleb met his stare evenly. "Didn't know it was your business." The room hushed slightly. Daniel forced a laugh and retreated, but the shift had already happened. The whispers were different now. The first dance began. Caleb turned to her. "Ready?" She nodded, pulse racing. His hand settled at her waist, guiding her onto the floor. The music wrapped around them, slow and steady. "You're shaking," he murmured. "So are you," she replied softly. He almost smiled. As they moved together, something unexpected happened. The pretending grew difficult. Not because it felt fake, but because it felt natural. She fit against him like she'd always belonged there. He hadn't realized how long it had been since he'd held someone without feeling haunted by memory. Her laughter, soft and genuine, cut through the noise in his head. When the song ended, neither of them stepped away immediately. Later, outside beneath the cool night sky, Daniel confronted them again. Pride had cracked. "You move on quick," he muttered. Emma surprised herself by stepping forward before Caleb could speak. "No," she said calmly. "I just stopped waiting." There was no anger in her voice, only clarity. Daniel faltered, unused to seeing her unafraid. Caleb didn't need to defend her. She had found her strength without him speaking a word. And that realization made his chest tighten in a way. That had nothing to do with pretending. When they returned inside for the final dance, the line between performance and truth had vanished. Caleb looked down at her and spoke quietly. "Emma, I don't want this to be just one night." Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if he could hear it. "It doesn't have to be," she whispered. The music swelled. The barn lights shimmered. And for the first time in months, neither of them felt like someone who had been left behind. They felt chosen, not because they were trying to prove something, but because somewhere, between courage and kindness, they had found each other. That night, Red Hollow would remember something new. Not the man who got left, not the girl who wasn't enough, but the moment two wounded hearts stopped pretending long enough to begin again. And if this story stirred something in you, if you believe in quiet strength, second chances, and love that begins unexpectedly, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, and trust me, the next one might touch your heart even deeper.